I don't know if you guys heard about this in the gaming industry. They got in through a fish tank. Somebody got into the fish tank and it was connected to their network.
Cybersecurity used to be like supplementary to quality for a medical device, and now they're integrated. Cybersecurity is part of quality. So the quality and the effectiveness and the safety of this device, cybersecurity is part of that.
Cybersecurity used to be an IT function, right? It was an IT team. But now CISOs are reporting to CFOs because they're handling risk, their insurance policy, the money side of things. So we're seeing the shift, and I think AI is helping that shift.
Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Med Device Cyber Podcast. As usual, we have our two co-hosts, myself, Trevor Slattery, and Christian Espinosa, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Melissa Aarskaug. I'd love to hear a little bit about you, and just first check in, how's your morning going so far?
My morning is going fabulous. Thank you for asking. Excited to be here today and talk to you two about cybersecurity.
You're coming from Austin, right? I think. Is it Austin?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, a little bit earlier for us today. It's like 7 in the morning for us.
Love to hear a little bit about what you're working on, and know that you're involved in cybersecurity, so it'll be a fun conversation. We're also obviously involved in cybersecurity more on the medical side, but you're a little bit more outside of the medical space. Is that correct?
Yes, my background is in regulated industries. I started my career in banking and then pivoted into civil engineering, and then found my way into gambling and gaming, and then found my way into cybersecurity. And so I've spent a lot of time in the casino gaming industry, where it's a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 days a year business with, financial systems, customer data, and really zero tolerance for downtime. And so similar kind of to the healthcare industry, it's always up, always taking care of patients. And so, when something goes wrong in the gambling industry, it's immediate revenue stops, regulators get involved, customers feel it, and it really forces a different type of mindset. And so you stop thinking about, let's perfectly protect, to let's start thinking about how this is going to keep the business running no matter what happens.
I know when we were talking a little bit beforehand, you mentioned gambling is probably more regulated than med tech. And I was curious if you could expand upon that a little bit.
Attackers are really hitting regulated industries. So there's a lot of industries that are regulated. In gambling, before you can launch a casino or sell a product, there's a long, rigorous licensing process. Depending on what state you're in, each state has different regulations. In some cases, some states will go back 10, 20 years. If you made $1,000 cash deposit into your bank account, they want to know what the cash was and why you deposited it. And so they get really in the weeds. And I've had several CEOs who have been married 30, 40 years tell me, gosh, these regulators know more than my wife does about everything I've ever done in my entire life. So they really turn over every single rock to make sure that people that are operating and running these casinos online and land-based are operating at a high level of integrity. They're going about doing it the right way. And so, I guess the question, why do attackers keep hitting these industries? Because they create pressure, right? I think attackers don't just look at or find the weaknesses. They look for environments that they can disrupt and force a response, not only from the casino, but from regulators. So oftentimes regulators, get involved quickly. And in regulated industries, they have high value data. They're always operating. They have the oversight from regulators. And so there's really no tolerance for downtime. So attackers and perpetrators know that if they go after a space like that, they're going to be, the casino is going to be forced to respond quicker versus just generally going into, targeting anybody. So in gaming, if a system goes down, revenue can stop. And that could be something like $1 million a day or multiple $1 million a day, depending on where your casino is. And the real loss is tens of millions of dollars in loss of, gambling and systems. And I forget the exact number, but I think it's, cybercrime is projected to be a $15 trillion business by 2030. I think it's about 15 trillion is projected.
It's pretty good. So it
Yeah,
sounds
maybe we're on
like,
the wrong side of the fence.
yeah, I know. I think about that sometimes. 'Cause I have a lot of skills, but I shouldn't use them for nefarious purposes. It sounds like though from what you're saying, Melissa, that the attackers are looking for leverage. Like you said, pressure point, and I guess it's true in med tech and healthcare as well. Like if I can get ransomware on a healthcare delivery organization, a large hospital, now they can't intake any patients. Patients may die. So if the hospital is forced to do something relatively quickly because the consequences are dire. And those consequences, it's not lost revenue. It's, potentially patient life or patient care versus gambling. It's like Amazon goes down every minute. It's $1 million they lose or something like that. So it is giving them more of a pressure. So it forces a response more so than attacking, a dry cleaning business or something that has a website.
Exactly. And I think, it's not the industry so much, it's the pressure that happens when something breaks. And so, I don't work in med device, but what still stands out to me is exactly what you just said. People's lives are on the line. So the end, we got to make sure the patients have what they need. And it's a similar risk environment outside of lives, right? But you still have connected systems, you still have regulated systems, and you still have the low tolerance for failure.
I think in medtech, and probably in most industries, the assuming something will go wrong point of view doesn't exist from my perspective in cybersecurity. Maybe in gambling, everybody else assumes nothing's going to go wrong, though, it seems like, because they don't have, like you referring to, like cyber resilience or a way to keep operations running in a similar capacity. It seems like in most industries, they haven't even thought of that. And then a cyber attack happens and it's like, oh, now what do we do, right?
Yeah, and that's a really fantastic point. Like, we should unpack that a bit because, I would say gaming doesn't do this perfectly, for the record. And compliance does not equal they're secure. So if you're compliant, you're not necessarily secure, but if you're secure, you're often compliant. So compliance is really the baseline, and attackers don't really care if you pass a compliance audit, right? They just want in and to get whatever they want to get. But I think, cybersecurity is treated as a technical thing. And I know if I talk to a lot of the CEOs of casinos, they, not all of them, but some of them would say, oh, that's an IT thing or that's a compliance thing. And, my compliance guys handle that or my security guys handle that. But it's not, because cyber impacts revenue, it impacts operations, it impacts trust. And so if something happens, it's not just IT responding, it's leadership that has to handle it. So cyber incidents are leadership events, and they're not, technical ones or just IT problems. And so I think having that mindset and realizing that, cybersecurity is an ongoing thing, we got to continue to get, more secure. And the minute that we find out that we have everything secure, something happens or, things change or AI becomes a big thing and is a big thing in our industry now. And so now we got to think about securing AI tools. And so I think it's an ongoing thing to harden our environment and to make it secure.
I think one of the challenges in medtech in healthcare is it's kind of like at your home, you've got all these devices, these IoT devices from other manufacturers that you can't like install endpoint protection on or do anything with. It's like you're relying on somebody else really to make sure that device is secure. With medtech, a medical device manufacturer is responsible for the device. The hospital has to accept the risk to put it on their environment, and they have no means of really managing that device. They just have to assume it's secure. They can do their own scanning of it, but it creates a situation where you've got all these devices by various manufacturers on your environment, and you have this like constant fear, at least I would if I was a healthcare delivery IT administrator, that one of these devices has a vulnerability which may affect my entire enterprise network at some point.
Yeah, and I always go back to the question, what do the attackers want? What are they really after that's inside whatever the product, whether it's a voting machine or a med tech device or a casino? um, they're actually very focused on what they want, right? So segmenting things in a way that keeps whatever they're after in that device separate from the network. So putting devices on a network that houses, important information is probably not a great idea, but segmenting it, right, in a way that maybe they only get whatever's on that device. So I think it's really getting focused on, what are these attackers after? And they're after the data that's inside whatever the product is. They want access to that data because they want to, they want to scale. They want to go from that device to the this, to the that, to the this to get more information because ultimately they want leverage for something. So data is always, this is my own opinion, is always kind of the starting point. Like in gaming, it's the player data, the financial activity, loyalty accounts, tribal information, IP. And in your industry, it could be the patient data, their identity. It's all monetizable, right? So they want to get that access because they want something with it. And so once they're in, they move across system, escalating privileges to figure out how your environment actually works. And so in our industry, they've stayed in environments for hundreds of days, learning how things work. And then they use what they know inside that environment to gain leverage in some capacity. And then they just extort the casinos and ask for, Bitcoin or however they are asking for whatever they're asking for. And so it's really no longer about, hey, we took your data. It's more about, we're going to disrupt your business. And if you don't pay us what we're asking by when we tell you to, we're going to shut your casino down. And it's the same thing I would have guessed in the med device. So, the difference is it's really the same. It's just, what are we protecting and how can we best protect it? And it's not putting everything on one network and making it work, right?
Right. One thing that comes up a lot in the med tech space and something that we hear a lot from the companies we work with is, obviously there are going to be different consequences if an oxygen pump is hacked into instead of your pacemaker gets hacked into. But a lot of times the manufacturer with the oxygen pump will go, well, it's just an oxygen pump. There's no harm. It's such a low risk device that if somebody hacks into it, what's really going to be the big deal? And that may be true, but I love what you said about start in one point, jump to another, and move your way through. If you have that oxygen pump in a connected hospital environment, which most of them are at this point, 74% of medical devices connect to the internet in some way or another. And so all that oxygen pump needs to be is the weakest link in the chain. That just needs to be something that the hacker can get into, and then it moves over into the Active Directory system, and then it moves into your electronic health records. And that's what they want to see.
Right. And so, I mean, I don't know if you guys heard about this in the gaming industry. They got in through a fish tank, right? And they've got in through, whatever there's many different ways we've seen things. We've seen social engineering in gaming, but
What happened with the fish tank thing? I think our listeners might want to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, somebody got into the fish tank and it was connected to their network, right? And they just
like the systems that manage the fish tank, the pumping the air through it and the circulation, all that stuff.
Yep. And same with HVAC that's connected to the network, the hotel system, and they just scale exactly what Trevor just said. They scale to get what they want. And it's really the lowest point of entry. And so a lot of times it's like, I think about, a bear's attacking all three of us, whoever runs the fastest wins, right? And it's like that in gaming. We've seen it in a lot of the industry where the perpetrators just drive up a highway that has a lot of casinos. One casino gets hit, the next one doesn't, the next casino does. Why does the one in the middle not get hit, but the other two on the outside did? It's because the one in the middle had a little bit more security than the other two, and it was taking them a lot longer to get into the environment. And they weren't getting anywhere as fast as they needed to. So they went down the road to someone else that was easier. And so sometimes it's not having, the best and most secure environments. Cause it's interesting. I would say 10 years ago, I got into cybersecurity. It's like 14 years ago when I started really reading and learning about it. And we weren't talking about the same things we were talking about today. The passwords were 1234. The passwords were password, right? We are way beyond let's get the passwords right in the world that we're in today. And we're seeing huge companies like Stryker, which is in your space, have huge things happen to them in March. And it's not only, the regulatory piece, it's employees now suing their company that they work for not properly keeping their data safe and secure. And so we're seeing, where before it was just the regulation, the industry, now we're seeing it on both sides of the street. So the companies that aren't doing their due diligence or requiring their third-party vendors to be secure they're coming both directions now, right?
Right. And that's a good point, because a lot of manufacturers in our industry, they have to go through the FDA to get cleared. The FDA says their device is secure, but that's like one check mark. The healthcare delivery organization often has this requirement that any device on our network has to exceed what the FDA was looking for. And a lot of the manufacturers don't consider like that end goal and what the requirements really are, because they might, and often are, most of the time higher than what the FDA looks for. So they have to like reverse engineer, what do I need to design into my product from a cybersecurity perspective, because this hospital expects these controls in place that the FDA doesn't even care about, as an example.
Yeah. And, if you look at and it's so interesting because we're talking in some capacity, very basic things. And when I look at the future, of where we're going by the end of, 2026, where are we going? We're more connected than we've ever been. All of our information is more exposed. Everything is becoming interconnected, which of course increases the attack surface. And attackers are getting faster, right? I know when I think about social engineering exercises that have happened to me, or text message I used to get, the Microsoft logo was the wrong colors or the spelling was wrong, and I could spot it quickly, right? And now, I work in the industry and I work in this space. Some things I'm getting sent, I'm like, whoa, that's so good. Because AI is accelerating both sides of the street. And so it is also widening the gap between organizations that are prepared versus organizations that are not prepared. And so cyber maturity is really becoming a competitive advantage in every industry, not just, gambling and healthcare. It's important. And, I think we talk about doing these patches and doing passwords and let's do some training. I often believe we're beyond the let's talk about passwords and trading. We are so far, the train has left the station. If you don't have the password, you know, requirements in place, that is such a low lift. We just got to get this stuff going. So, I think about what should leaders do? Let's correlate this back. What can I do? It's really four things, in my opinion. You got to know what you have. If you don't know who your partners are, these devices are on this network, or, this is our HVAC vendor and this is our that vendor. You really need visibility across every single device and the systems you have. And if the vendors don't want to give it to you, switch vendors. Or at least threaten it to the vendor and see what they do, right? Or get a roadmap of when they can, give you visibility, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your network. It's your responsibility. It's your knack if it goes south, right? It's your cyber policy. And then prioritize the critical systems. Okay, so we have 10 things. We can't do all 10 things this year. So prioritize what you're going to focus on first, and focus on what would hurt the business most first. So that's how you prioritize it, is what would hurt the business most, and then practice the response, right? So run these simulations. Most teams aren't really ready for this real pressure. And that could be something, I know there's a lot of consultants that run these, and they'd probably throw darts in my head for saying this, but I feel like it doesn't cost anything for you to run it internally and work with, we're going to do this one day, pick an hour and see what happens. You could test your own team.
Like a tabletop exercise.
Yeah. You don't even have to hire someone. You could say, okay, Mr. CEO, we're the IT department. We should run a simulation. Let's pretend like this happens this day, this time. Let's see how the team's prepared and run it, right? Find a time that's not super busy and run it in-house and see what happens. And then after you do that, you're going to see, oh my God, we either did great or we failed, and you'll have areas for improvement. And then once you get that data, align cyber to the business. Security needs to understand operations. Operations needs to understand security. It's not like these guys do that, these guys do this. It's all around. Everybody needs to be understanding that, tooling is part of operations. And so I think people that don't have that visibility, they don't know what data they have, it's really scary, because if you don't know what you have or who has access to it, how could you protect it?
It's interesting because I've been in cybersecurity for, 30 something years now. And the same concept has applied. We used to like to say, know thyself. You have to know your environment. And then once you know your environment, know what the critical assets are. But even today, that we've been talking about this for like 30 plus years, I feel like people still don't understand their own environments. Like they still don't know what's on their own environment. And then they try to protect everything equally. Like all the Windows, 11 machines all have to be patched in the same order. That's not true, because some of them have critical data. Some of them don't really matter that much, right? But people still don't have their head around prioritizing. So then we wonder why things don't get done in the right manner and why these critical assets are attacked. I mean, it's a number of problems. I've been doing penetration testing and going on site and breaking into networks a lot. And not maybe one out of probably 100 organizations actually knew what was on their environment. Nobody could produce an accurate inventory.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Let's unpack that more, because I've done thousands of pen tests, thousands of them. And it's always baffling to me. These are between industry wide. They're under 50 grand. Let's just, for argument's sake, they're under 50 grand in industries for a pen test. Of all the pen tests I've seen, I've never, ever in 1,000 seen somebody remediate all the findings in a pen test. Why can they not do it? Kind of what you were saying at the beginning. They can't because they have old systems that don't allow the patches, or they don't have the time to do it because they're a small team, or they don't have the money to do it because they have shrinking budgets. So then why do the pen test? In my mind, I always think if you're going to go out and spend the money to do a test, to give you the information, but you're not going to do anything with the information, why do it? Why not spend the 30, 40 grand on a tool that's going to help you protect your environment, or, correctly tag your data? Get your data tagged. Start a data governance project and get it organized and classified so you know what you can do with it, and then outsource the rest versus going in and doing the security assessment. Because there's really 4 types of people. There's the people that do nothing with it. And I've had many CEOs, GMs call me and say, Melissa, you sent me last year's pen test report. And I said, no, nothing's changed. And they're blown away that they've done nothing in a year. So that's customer one.
So you just get the same report as the previous year, basically, because all the same vulnerability that a few new ones exist, right?
Right. It's the same thing. Or the second kind is they don't do anything with it because they don't know how to do it, or they can't afford to make the changes, or they can't upgrade the way they need to upgrade. The third type of customer is the type that's like, oh my God, and they go buy 150 tools. And so now they got a bigger problem because now they have tools that aren't, correctly doing what they need to be doing. They're not correctly tuned. They don't even know what they're looking at. And then kind of to your point, there's the fourth kind, the kind that's like, okay, we know we have a problem. We know we need to do some fixes. Let's do some things. Let's call the company and let's work out what we could do next. I have never, ever had a customer come back and say, hey, like on their own volition, I did all these remediations, but I don't understand this. I've never had a customer do that in 15 years of doing pen tests ever, which is really sad to me. That's millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And if half of them did something, that's $50 million of waste. So what can we do, right? We could listen to podcasts that talk about cybersecurity that make us rethink how we think about cybersecurity. We could do exercises internally, and we could hit the low-hanging fruit first that doesn't cost the company anything.
I think we are a little bit lucky in the in the medtech space. The requirements are so tight around what you can do and what you can't do. And we were talking about this yesterday. Everybody sees the FDA as this dragon to go slay, and it's this big hurdle to get over. And so when we're working with companies and we say, okay, here's your pen test report, oftentimes, and more often than not, it's their first time ever doing a pen test. They've never seen a network test. They've never seen, they barely know what cybersecurity is. They just know these guys get FDA. And so we say, here's your report. And they go, we scrubbed it. We basically tore down the device and rebuilt it. Everything is gone. Try again. And we go, okay, great. That's what we like to see. But sometimes we do see the inverse happen as well, kind of like you said. And it's especially hard because we'll have some manufacturers come back and say, we don't want to fix these. And we go, then you're not going to sell this product. It's a little black or white. You fix it, you don't have a device anymore. Those are the two options. The FDA does not mess around with it.
Well, sometimes they can't fix it because they're 6 years into product development and they got 1 year of runway left, and they're going to have to redo things and go back a whole year because they didn't consider it from the beginning. In the FDA and in cybersecurity, it's supposed to be designed into the product, not bolted on. But if these regulations came out and you're 5 years into a 7-year development, what do you do, right? When you tell them to redo everything, it's a massive lift.
But little teeny tiny changes and little teeny tiny steps compound over time, right? So I think it's the whole analogy of eat an elephant one bite at a time. So there's one side of like, let's just ignore it and keep going. And then there's the other side. Okay, let's just, now that we have the information, let's continue from here. Let's make what we can change, right? And continue forward with what we can, but what can we do better? And how can we get better over time? And, having that attitude of like, we need to do better, we need to be more secure is really important. And, I don't know about, I'm interested to get your perspective on this. Like in my industry, a lot of the industry is like, okay, now that we know we have all these vulnerabilities, we're going to go buy a cyber insurance policy to protect us.
They won't, you can't buy it unless you fix most of those things, or at least say you do. Because then they're not going to support the claim if you have one.
That's exactly where it's going. So now they're going to fill out, like when I started with due diligence forms, they were one page due diligence forms. Now some of them are 6 to 20 pages. The insurance providers are actually doing their own scans to make sure it looks good based on what you told them. And then when something does happen, because it's not if, it's when, then they're going to deny your claim because you didn't do A, B, C, D. And so what's happened is a lot of times people haven't taken, the questionnaire seriously, or they haven't taken cyber seriously because they have this, policy that's going to protect them. And then I see a lot of insurance companies rejecting claims now, just like in the automobile industry, right? There's a lot of claims rejected, right? Because there's a lot of fraud in that industry. And it's the same thing with gaming and gambling. If you're not doing what you're supposed to, like cybersecurity e-learning training for your staff, right? Then, and you said you did do that in your questionnaire, the insurance company is going to say, hey, like you have 1,000 employees and 500 of them didn't sign off on this training. Why? You're negligent. We're not going to reimburse you.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies try to treat cyber insurance as this silver bullet that they can just slap on top of the company and go, great, we're good. If we get hacked, we've got insurance for it. And that's still not even taking in the intangible harm to getting hacked outside of just, oh, sure, we'll get reimbursed for whatever financial loss. If someone needs to pay the ransomware, it's our insurance. It's not us. But you're still the one who got hacked. You're still the one who's lost that trust with your customers. You're still the one whose data has been stolen. And so there's so much that I don't think people really think about this stuff. They just go, oh, we don't want to lose money. We don't want to fall out of compliance. We don't want to get, we don't want to violate HIPAA or whatever. So let's just put this sticker on top of it and put our heads in the sand and hope everything works out. And it never does.
But think about it. We're all humans, right? We're all trying to do our best job at whatever we're doing, right? And what happens even in our personal lives, the things that are most important, we do, right? So and that's just how life works. Things bubble up that are most important. And then when it's really 911 and we got it, the stove's on fire, we run over there and, put the fire out, right? And so I think it's more important than ever. Like all of us personally, professionally are overloaded and bombarded all the time. We're a lot of, the world's working on fight or flight and responding and being transactional with their day to day. And it's not until we kind of take the reins of our lives and our jobs that we can make the change. And I think it's the same too for people in their personal lives, right? So if you're an employee of a company and they can't keep your information safe, it's up to you to put checks and balances in place in your personal life. And so you're safe, right? And I think, I talk a lot to, senior citizens who are very trusting to people that call. And we've seen a lot with deep fakes and technology and being able to social engineer information out of people. And so when I think of the future, I really wish to hope for people to take it seriously, to take it real seriously for their own personal life. And if you're working for a company that's not taking it seriously, to maybe be the person that raised your hand. And like I'm an engineer brained person. And so I'm a technical person, and it didn't used to be my personality to go to leadership to see something, say something, because technical people are more introvert. And I know that's such a flat statement,
It's true.
but we're more introverted than extroverted. But it's really imperative now that if you're in IT or security or you run a tech division, that you really build these cases around what you see to leadership, and so they understand. And if they're not responding, continue to do it and really CYA, because I've seen a lot of people in my industry let go for cyber incidences, but their company wouldn't let them build buy the products and build the strategy and do the things to be secure. And so I think, kind of to your point, Trevor, I think it's, we're all humans, and we're just doing what bubbles up to the top of our desk every day. And then when we get to it, we get to it, right?
Well, that's the whole busy versus productive argument. But I think, something you said earlier, Melissa, about, one of the challenges is people don't really think cybersecurity is related to operations. They kind of like have the two like separate. I think one of the things medtech is doing well, and maybe now that I think about it, we might be on the forefront, is in medical devices, cybersecurity used to be like supplementary to quality for a medical device. And now they're integrated. So what we're saying in our industry is cybersecurity is part of quality. So the quality and the effectiveness and the safety of this device, cybersecurity is part of that. Before it was supplementary, but now it's integrated. And I think from a just broader perspective, we've done a horrible job with this. We keep thinking cybersecurity is on the sideline over here, but with all the things going on, we should know it should be integrated into our operations, integrated more tightly into how we do things. I'm just wondering why we haven't got to that point yet, despite all the incidents and data breaches and everything in the news.
I think it's going to happen like by this year more. I think we're going to see it more, because if you think of cybersecurity, used to be an IT function, right? It was an IT team. But now, CISOs are reporting to CFOs because they're handling risk, their insurance policy, the money side of things. So we're seeing the shift. And I think AI is helping that shift, because AI is not, a quote unquote IT project. It's touching every department, right? So if a company wants to deploy, like say, a Copilot license, they may start with IT, but HR is involved with training and, helping people get their co-pilot training done. But so it touches everyone, and the CFO is involved because it costs money and they want to make sure there's an ROI on the spend. And so I think AI is going to help cyber touch all sides of the business than in the past, just naturally, because of kind of where we are going in the world.
I think that AI is a little bit of an arms race right now.
I feel like it is for sure.
It's definitely an arms. Yeah, let me peel that back. It's definitely an arms race right now. So out here in San Francisco, they just had the RSA conference, and it's kind of funny to see what's the latest thing everybody's talking about. I think about 3 years ago, going to Black Hat, and it was API security. API security. This tool protects your APIs. This tool watches your APIs. This tool makes new APIs, and this tool gets rid of your old ones. Like everything was an API. And walking around RSA, you couldn't go more than 15 seconds without hearing agentic security or AI-enabled cloud protection, something like that. And, it's 100% on everyone's mind, but I think to a degree that has never really happened, at least that I've seen in cybersecurity. Like nobody's gotten this excited about a single technology in a long time.
But I think, look, that's the marketers, right? The marketing people are going to market where they're going to get the most clicks, the most bang for their buck. And AI is front and center right now. Like, I love it. Like, AI has been around forever. Like, this is not a new, like, here we are in 2026, AI has arrived. But I think it's getting more juice because we're seeing people and companies make the stance that we're laying off staff and we're replacing staff with AI. And so, it makes people, not only people that have jobs curious about, is my job going to be eliminated, but it makes companies have to prioritize it a different way. And so I agree with you. I think there's still, I am not the like doomsday kind of gal, like the world's coming to an end, none of us are going to have jobs. Like I am not that. I think about like, when cars came to the market or cell phones or whatever new technology came out, for a while it was, back in 2000, I laugh. I remember in 2000 and 1999, they were saying, oh my gosh, remove all the money from your bank account because once it turns 2000, there's going to be no more money in your bank account. And I just thought it was so goofy. But so many people did that. They went to the banks to withdraw their money for feelers. So like, look, not all data is correct, right? Not all media has all the answers, right? It's just a bunch of people's opinions. And so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how, but I am excited for healthcare AI being leveraged for patients, right? From doctor to doctor, patient to patient. I think there's a lot of great ways, the medical industry can leverage AI and technology to save people's lives.
Awesome. Well, we're coming up on time. I like to go around and ask for some key takeaways from our conversation. What about you, Melissa? Any key takeaways?
Gosh, so many thoughts here. If you could take one idea away from our talk, don't ask how to prevent the incident, but ask how your business continues when it goes wrong. That's where the real resilience starts, is understanding, business has to continue and we need to build a plan around it. And so, and maybe like second to that, I would say, cybersecurity isn't about eliminating risk. I think everybody's trying to eliminate every possible risk there is, but in life, there is always risk, right? It's about kind of being ready and understanding when it shows up. And so the organizations that are going to win as we kind of move through, cybersecurity and AI are the ones that keep operating under pressure, but that are making these teeny tiny tweaks with cybersecurity and then bringing the staff up with them, right? So if you have to, buy your staff a coffee for doing their cybersecurity training, or you have to, teach them, see something, say something, it's a culture, right? Buy them a coffee. It's a lot cheaper than a cybersecurity breach.
for sure. I think for me, you're talking about going behind the scenes in the casinos, and I know like you're on camera all the time at a casino, but your analogy of being able to zoom in and see like a freckle on someone, like it just makes me think. I'm not sure when I go to casinos anymore. They're probably like monitoring my heart rate remotely, my my temperature to see if I'm nervous and everything. So like I'm super paranoid now about casino. They're probably zooming in and have like every ounce of data from me from a biometric perspective and everything else to see if I'm nervous and everything else. I'm sure they're measuring these things and we probably don't even think about it.
But that's a really good point. So think about your life right now. You are on camera every day, wherever you go in the world, all the time. Whether it's a restaurant or an airport or your car that has GPS on it, all of us can be found at any specific moment, right? We're walking around in businesses and places and spaces that have cameras. And so our lives are if you have a smartphone, you're giving away a lot of your power, right? Because all your apps track you and what you do and what you look at. And so just know that, we're all in the same boat and we're all in it together.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Melissa, for coming on as a guest. And thanks everyone
Thank
for
you for
tuning
having me.
in. Thanks, Trevor, as usual, for being a co-host. And hope to see you on the next one.